Hi Year 10, it's Mr. Azzopardi with a video lesson. Sorry that you can't be in school for this lesson. But I thought I'd put it on a video because it can be a bit easier than doing a live lesson, I think, because it means you can go and rewind and do it at your own pace. So let's see how it goes. So you're going to need, there's a handout which I've put on Teams for you to go with the lesson. And so some of the lesson will be from based on the handout, and some you'll just have to write on paper. If you can print out the handout, that would be the best thing. But I will, at each stage, I will kind of talk about what you can do if you can't print it out, because I understand obviously if you can't print it out, that makes it difficult. But yeah, I'll kind of go through what you can do if you can't print out the handout. In some cases, I've got printed out versions of these handouts, so you can just get there's some of the information that it might be too much to just write it all out. So you can just have a copy of the handout when you come into school. Okay, so this is the title. If you can write this title in, how can I explain the importance of the Sangha, the reasons why people become monks, and the lifestyle of a monk? So we're looking at the Sangha, the Buddhist community, and particularly at monks. Why have I talked about just monks and not nuns? Well, we'll talk about that, but basically because in many parts of the Buddhist world, there aren't any nuns anymore, even though there were at the time when the Buddha lived. So if you can write that title in, and we'll go on to the first task. So as you can see, we're going to look at why the Sangha is important, why people become monks, and what the lifestyle of a Buddhist monk is like. And to do that, we need to start by saying, what is the Sangha? So we're going to write down these definitions of Sangha in your notes. There are actually two definitions of what the word Sangha means. They're both to do with the Buddhist community. For some Buddhists, when you say Sangha, it means monks and nuns. Sometimes people make it clearer by calling them the monastic Sangha. Monastic just means to do with monks. So the monks and nuns in Buddhism are sometimes called the Sangha. You might want to add this to your definition. This definition is the main one used in Theravada Buddhism. In Theravada Buddhism, when people talk about the Sangha, they usually mean monks and nuns. That doesn't mean it does. The second definition is found in Theravada Buddhism. It's just in everyday life, when they use Sangha, they usually mean the first definition. The second definition is that the Sangha can be used to refer to all Buddhists, including monks, nuns, and lay people. Lay people are just Buddhists who are not monks and nuns. And of course, throughout the Buddhist world, the majority of Buddhists are not monks and nuns, don't live that kind of lifestyle, don't shave their hair and wear robes and things. And so this definition includes a much bigger proportion of people. Now, some forms of Mahayana Buddhism use this one more often. Particularly, there are some forms of Mahayana Buddhism where there are no monks and nuns. So there, obviously, Sangha couldn't be used to refer to monks and nuns. So those are the two definitions. It means monks and nuns, that's smaller community, or it means all Buddhists. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this part is going to be on your handout. This is the first bit on your handout. So we're going to start by looking at some stuff to do with monks. And like I said, most of the stuff we're looking at in this lesson is to do with monks, a little bit at nuns. So we're really focusing more on the first definition of the Sangha, as in monks and nuns, rather than the whole community. Although there are little bits that talk about the whole community. So in the Buddhist world, there are traditionally two different kinds of monks, forest monks and village monks. Partly that's to do with where they live, although it's not actually the main difference between them. A forest monk can live in like a place where other people live, and a village monk can live, well, I suppose. Can a village monk live in the forest? Not very usual for a village monk to live in a forest, but certainly there are monks who are classified as forest monks who live in villages or even cities. So we're going to look at two videos, which I'm going to put in the links below this clip. One describes a forest monk's way of life, and one describes a village monk's way of life. What I want you to do is watch them, and then see if you can round that pictures. I've got a picture of a forest monk and a picture of a village monk. I want you to do some annotation, just do like a little mind map. What do these monks do? What's their way of life? What's their focus of why they're being a monk, that kind of thing. Now, you might not want to do any notes based on the videos. You might just want to watch the videos, take it in, and then as for each one, I'm going to go through some stuff on the slides. So If you just pause now and watch the forest monk video, and then come back to this video. Okay, you should have watched that video to do with the forest monk. You probably would have noticed he did quite a lot of meditation. Gets up very early in the day to do meditation. He kind of sounds like based on what we've said about Buddhism so far, you'd expect a Buddhist to talk about, because he talks about suffering and wanting to get away from suffering and those kind of things. So he's kind of like meets the stereotype of what I would think of as a Buddhist monk when I first was introduced to Buddhism. So here's some things I want you to add to your mind map about forest monks. Forest monks focus on reaching enlightenment or nirvana. Now you might think, don't all monks do that? But no, they not all do. But for them, it's very important. They're getting to nirvana. They will practice a lot of meditation. That will be a main focus for them. They will often live away from large groups of other people. So they might live in a forest. Even if they don't live in a forest, they tend to not live in a very urban area or built up area. But even then, if they did, they probably would not spend quite a lot of time away from other people. These aren't monasteries where lots of other people are welcome all the time, because these monks want to spend their time in meditation and in peace, trying to get to nirvana. Now, they usually became monks, these people, because they're dissatisfied with life in some way. They felt that suffering that the Buddha talked about, particularly that samskara dukkha, that third level of suffering, which says, like, in a way, they kind of felt like life seemed a bit pointless to them. They never seemed to get anywhere in life. They never seemed to reach a final goal of lack of suffering. So linked to that is the fact that these monks, they value the peace of mind that being a monk brings as well. So that for them, one of the good things about being a monk is how peaceful it is. Now, linked to that, to the fourth bullet point about dissatisfied with life, most of these monks, forest monks, will become monks when they are old. They'll have older, not like old as in retired, but as in during their adult life. You can become a Buddhist monk as a child. That's allowed in the rules, and in many Buddhist countries people do, but usually not a forest monk, because to be a forest monk, to live that very strict life of meditation, you probably have to have that motivation that comes from having lived a bit of life and felt like that dissatisfaction, like they've tried the world of having a job and finding satisfaction that way, and they couldn't find that satisfaction, so they give up the worldly life and become a monk. So that's a forest monk. Let's have a look at a village monk. Okay, so again, if you watch the clip about this village monk, this is a village monk from Cambodia. He speaks in Cambodian, but there's subtitles on the video. So just when you think, what does he do with his day? What does he not mention doing? Why might he have become a monk? So just watch the video, pause this, watch the video, and then come back here. So you should have seen, the one thing is that he didn't mention meditation at all. And village monks might meditate. I mean, it's not that they don't meditate or can't meditate, but they don't always put a lot of emphasis on meditation. So some village monks will not meditate very much at all, and it's certainly not their main thing. You would have noticed the main thing that he did all day was to study Buddhism and then preach it to other people, and that is part of what village monks are all about. So let's go through some notes. The main focus for a village monk is to study the Dharma, to know the Buddha's teachings really well, and to teach it to others. Forest monks might have less of a knowledge of the Dharma, because they will really be focusing mainly on the bits of the Dharma they need in order to be good meditators and get to nirvana. They won't learn lots of parts of the Buddhist scriptures by heart, but village monks will. They tend not to focus on meditation or their own enlightenment. They're likely to think that they probably won't get to enlightenment in this lifetime. They're likely to think that that might be something they might do in another lifetime. In the time being now, they're more people who are kind of dedicated to helping others, to spreading the religion, to teaching others about the religion. They also help people by performing rituals. For example, they might go to funerals and weddings and perform religious rituals there. Monks are very important at funerals because, as we'll see in a later thing, merit making is a big part of a Buddhist funeral. So you'd have some monks there to feed the monks. Might seem strange, but that's something that's very important. For weddings, Well, Buddhist monks don't perform the wedding ceremonies like Christian priests do, but often monks will play some role. They might do some chanting and stuff, which is a blessing to the wedding ceremony. Village monks are also there as a source of moral guidance, so to give people advice. Again, this is similar to a Christian priest. People might go to see their priest if they go with some problem, they're not sure what to do in their life. They might go and visit a priest. Same with a village monk. And all these things, performing rituals, giving moral guidance, teaching the Dharma to other people, all of those things are things that forest monks might see as a bit of a imposition on their time. For forest monks, they want to spend their time meditating, getting to nirvana. These other things, they say, are for village monks instead. Now, village monks are much more likely to become monks when they're younger. Their motivation isn't this kind of get away from suffering to the same degree. Their motivation is more to help the religion or something like that. And so sometimes in some Buddhist countries, they become monks when they're very, very young. In the Buddhist scriptures, this is an interesting fact. In the Buddhist scriptures, the age you have to be to become a monk it just says you have to be old enough to scare away a crow. In most Buddhist countries, that's taken to mean you have to be like 10 or something. Though my children can scare away crows now. And I think my daughter could scare away a crow when she was about 3. So I don't know, it seems strange to me. But there we go. It's an interesting fact. Okay, so that's village and forest monks. Okay, underneath that on your handout, you can see this. It says, why might someone give 3 reasons why someone might join the monastic Sangha? 3 marks. So why might someone become a monk, basically, or a nun? I'm going to go through some reasons. Obviously, in that question, you'd only need to have 3 reasons, really. But we might as well go through as many as we can, just so that we know them all. So I've got some pictures. Top left-hand side, nirvana. That's the number 1 reason I would put down. They want to become a monk or nun because they think it's easier to get to nirvana if you're a monk or a nun. We'll talk about that, why that might be later. Secondly, we saw someone might become a village monk to teach other people. There's a person in a red suit teaching people. So they might become a monk or nun in order to teach other people about the Dharma. Number 3, they might become a monk or nun to dedicate themselves to meditation. There's someone sitting in meditation there. Number 4, as we go round, that's supposed to represent someone with a very busy life. So it might say someone wants to become a monk or a nun because they want to get away from the kind of hassle and hecticness of life. They think that life is full of too much suffering, it's too busy, so they want a more peaceful life. The last one, which is a picture of the globe with a university-style hat on and a load of books, is about education, but this is a slightly different reason. In some countries, particularly in Thailand, Buddhist monks receive a free education, and they can be educated up to university level for free. In countries where education is sometimes financially out of the reach of many people, some people might become a monk in order to get that education. So you might become a monk, and then you go through your education, and then when you finish, you stop being a monk. Now, it depends on the Buddhist country. You might think, well, isn't that kind of cheating the system, really? Shouldn't you be becoming a monk for a religious reason rather than to get an education? Well, in some Buddhist countries, it's seen as bad to be a monk and then stop being a monk. That's sometimes got a bit of a... It's not against the rules, but in some Buddhist countries, it's not seen as a good thing to do. In Thailand, however, it's quite common for people to become monks for short periods of time. And my understanding is that they don't really think it's a terrible thing if someone becomes a monk to get an education, because in their time as a monk, they will probably do quite a lot to help Buddhism and help Buddhist people, So it's not like if they become a monk and get an education, it's not like they just do their education. They also have to help out at temples and teach the Dharma and all this kind of stuff. So, for some people might become a Buddhist monk to get an education, but that's not necessarily seen as kind of a selfish or bad thing. Okay, moving on. Okay, we're going to talk about the rules for Buddhist monks to follow. In fact, we're going to talk about the different rules that all kinds of Buddhists would follow. And this is on the next page on your handout. So, if you can see on that handout, as you can see, it says at first rules for lay people, and it's got 5 things. Those are just the 5 precepts that we've talked about before, the 5 moral rules that all Buddhists are supposed to follow. They are to refrain from, that means to not do these things, harming living things, taking what is not given, sexual misconduct, lying or gossip, and taking intoxicating substances, that is drugs and alcohol. There are then a set of rules for novice monks. Now you might want to add this on your handout. If you haven't got the handout, it might be useful to write out these two first sets of rules for lay people and novice monks. But at least you need to make sure you understand what they are. So lay people are just normal Buddhists who aren't monks. A novice monk is someone training to become a monk. A lot of religions have this thing. Before you become a monk, or before, whatever it is, a priest or whatever, you have a period where you're kind of not a lay person, an ordinary person, but you're not yet a monk. You're training. And it's only after you go through the training that you'll be officially confirmed as a monk. Now, novice monks follow the 5 precepts and then 5 extra rules. So they only follow 10 rules. It's actually false. It's actually a bit more complicated than that, because they changed one of the rules. So lay people in Buddhism have to refrain from sexual misconduct, which is things like adultery. For novice monks, that one changes to they have to have no sex at all. They have to be completely celibate, so they can't have sex of any kind. But then they add these 5 extra ones, and the 5 extra ones are these. They have to not do these things. Taking substantial food after midday. So that means from 12 o'clock midday onwards, they cannot eat substantial food. That means they can't eat a proper meal. Sometimes they can have something like if they're feeling weak or something, I've heard that they can have boiled sweets or something to make things okay. But generally, they're not allowed food in the afternoon. Secondly, the next one is they're not allowed to do dancing, singing, or play music. Those are things they're not allowed to do. Next, they're not allowed to use garlands. Garlands are like necklaces made of flowers, perfumes, and personal adornment like jewellery. So they're not allowed to wear fancy stuff, Next, they're not allowed the use of luxurious beds or seats. That usually means, for beds, that they just sleep on the floor, maybe on a mat on the floor. That's the usual way they sleep, not in a comfy bed. And they have to not accept or hold. They can't even hold gold or silver. Now, that is usually taken to mean money, gold or silver. So today it will be interpreted as money. Now, I just want to say something about these rules. The question is, what is the point of these rules? Is the focus of the rules different for novice monks and for lay people? Well, I would say there is a difference, and you might want to just write this underneath the rules. The rules for lay people are all about not doing bad stuff. Mainly they're about not doing bad stuff. So don't harm living things, don't take what's not given, don't steal, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and so on. So the rules for lay people are about not doing bad stuff, and because of that, they're really linked to making sure you don't get a bad rebirth. Why do you follow the rules? To make sure that you get a good rebirth in your next life. So that would be what I put underneath. These rules are for making sure you get a good rebirth, because you don't want to do bad stuff, you might get a bad rebirth. Now that reflects the fact that usually lay people are seen as that's their main goal, get a good rebirth. For lay people, it's usually in Buddhist history hasn't been seen as they're probably going to get to nirvana. Monks and nuns, particularly forest monks and nuns, are more focused on nirvana. And therefore, you can see that many of their rules are not really to do with being a good person or avoiding bad actions. They're more to do with giving up stuff. So if you look at eating in the afternoon, Buddhists don't think that it's bad to eat in the afternoon, that you'll get bad karma if you do it. But they think that it will help you get to nirvana if you don't do it, because you're giving up craving. Same thing with dancing and singing. They don't think that it's bad to dance or sing. If people dance and sing, they won't get bad karma. But they are things that people might crave to do, and therefore Buddhists would say if you want to get to nirvana, it will be good if you do not do those things. And same again, like money, wearing jewellery, sleeping on a luxurious bed. So I would say that the novice monks and nuns rules are much more about giving up craving and therefore getting to nirvana, whereas the lay people's rules are about giving up evil actions and therefore trying to make sure you get a good rebirth in your next life. Right. Okay, those are the rules for monks and nuns. Now, the rules for so those are the rules for lay people and novice monks and nuns. The rules for fully ordained monks. A fully ordained monk is someone who's officially become a monk. They're no longer training; they're like a proper monk. There's lots of rules, so we're going to look at those a little bit. So, fully ordained monks are called bhikkhus. The word for nun is just bhikkhuni. This means female bhikkhu. Now their rules are found in a section of the Pali Canon called the Vinaya Pitaka. The Vinaya Pitaka. The Vinaya Pitaka it's a section of the Pali Canon, and it basically just contains all the rules that monks follow. It's a very big section because, as well as the rule, it always has a story about when the Buddha started that rule. The idea is in the Pali Canon that originally, when the Buddha started the monks and nuns, there were no rules, and it was only when people did things that the Buddha thought, oh well, they shouldn't really do that he introduced the rules. So every rule that monks and nuns follow has a story about how the Buddha first introduced that rule. Now, there are 227 rules for monks. There are actually 311 for nuns. We'll look at that in a bit about why there's a difference. We're going to focus on the monks' rules here. Now, the monks' rules, we're not going to go through all 227, but we're going to go through some of them. Now, they are divided in order of seriousness, right? You've got all this stuff on your handout, right? The most serious rules are rules where you get expelled from the Sangha, expulsion. In other words, if you do that rule, if you break that rule, you get kicked out of the Sangha. You're no longer a monk or nun. The second set is there's a period of probation. So in other words, there's a fixed period where it says, if you do this, you'll be kicked out of the Sangha for a certain period of time. When you've done that, you can come back in. It's a bit like exclusion, isn't it? From school, I was just thinking that's quite similar, really. Permanent exclusion, and then out for a week or whatever. The third category is a bit weird. They're decided on a case-by-case basis. So these are basically the same as number 2. But for number 2, it says in the Vinaya, this is how long you'll be kicked out for. Whereas for number 3, there's no definite about how long you get kicked out. It's for the other monks have to decide based on how bad they think breaking that rule was in this situation. And then you get kicked out for a certain amount of time. Okay, those are the most serious rule breaks. Number 4 and 5 are kind of the second level. These are ones where if you do this thing, there's no punishment apart from that you have to confess that you've done it. For number 4, you have to confess and give up the property that you should not have. So these are all rules that are about, when you have something that you shouldn't have. And that's a big deal in Buddhism because Buddhist monks are only allowed to have 8 possessions. There's only 8 things a Buddhist monk can have. Those 8 things are, there are 3 parts to a Buddhist monk's robe. There's a belt that goes with the robe. You're allowed to have a needle and thread to sew up your robe. You're allowed to have a bowl that you eat your food out of. And you're allowed to have a water strainer. That water strainer is probably not that useful today, but when the Buddha was alive, it was dangerous. Monks and nuns were wandering around. It was quite dangerous to drink water from rivers and stuff, but you don't know what's in it. So people used to have a water strainer to strain the water to make sure it was safer to drink. So some if you have something you shouldn't have, then you confess that you've got it and you give it up. It's taken away. Number 5, the 5th thing, nothing gets taken away. You just have to confess. The 6th level is there's no punishment for some of these things. You don't even have to confess. So these rules are more like advice. They're more like, look, nothing's going to happen. You don't have to confess to anyone. There's no punishment. But if you want to be a good monk or nun, you probably shouldn't do this thing. Now, I've given a whole list of examples of rules, and I just want you to, in a minute, pause the video and go through and just think, how serious do you think each one was? Where would you put it? Do you think it would be number 1, you get expelled? Do you think it's 6, no punishment? Do you think it's 5? What do you think? Where would you put it? I want you to pause and just read them through and just think about it, and then we'll go through and you can just write the number next to each one so you know which they are, because I've got the answers here. If you haven't got the handout, you might want to just watch this bit of the video, maybe just write down, but perhaps you could just write down an example of one rule that's in each category, if that makes sense. So let me get my answers on this one, because I've got the answers written down somewhere here. And right, okay, pause it, have a read through, and then we'll restart the video and we'll go through them. Okay, let's go through these one by one. Not to steal. If you steal something, that is number 1. If you found to steal something, you get kicked out of the Sangha. Not to touch a woman, so that means literally a monk cannot shake hands with a woman. That is number 2. It's a period of probation, so you get kicked out for a brief period of time. Here's what I should have said. Some of these rules are quite funny, the way they're worded, I guess. Not to be found alone with a woman in an isolated place that can arise suspicions about conversations on lustful topics. Ooh. That is number 3. So in other words, so that basically just, I suppose it's things on how bad it looks. So the point here is that the monk it was found out that he was alone with a woman, and the idea is that they could have been having a naughty conversation about stuff or something like that, or a kind of, it might lead to romance or something, and that's a bad thing for a monk. So I suppose that means that it depends how bad it looked on how long they get kicked out for. So that is 3. Next one, not to teach the Dharma to someone holding an umbrella unless that person is ill. So another weird one. That is 6. Why is that seen as a bad thing? Well, it's probably a bad translation, actually. It probably means a parasol. So instead of an umbrella, it means a parasol. Parasol is like an umbrella style thing which you hold over your head and keep the sun away. Now, if you think about it, in the society that the Buddha lived in, having a parasol, being able to have something like that you could hold over your head to keep the sun out, was a bit of a sign of status. Only a richer person would have something like that. And so if that's a sign of status, when a Buddhist monk preaches to someone, it seems very important to Buddhism that the person puts the Buddhist monk as a higher status to them. So that, Buddhists would generally, when they meet a Buddhist monk, bow down to the floor to the Buddhist monk to say, like, I respect this person, they're higher than me. So the idea was, if someone comes up to a Buddhist monk and the Buddhist monk teaches them and the person continues to carry their parasol, because the parasol is a sign of status, that person is almost saying, look at me, I'm better than this Buddhist monk. And that shouldn't happen. There's an exception made if the person is ill, because if you're ill, and you might need a parasol to keep the sun off because the sun might make you weak or whatever. But that's so monks shouldn't do that, teach the Dharma to that person, but it's only there's no punishment, it's just advice. Okay, not to have sexual intercourse, that is category 1. If a monk has sex, they get kicked out. Not to keep an extra robe for more than 10 days. So if you keep an extra robe, then that's number 4, you've got to confess and give up the extra robe. Not to claim attainments of stages of pure mental concentration that have not been achieved. That might seem weird, but that's number 1. What that basically means is you shouldn't say that you're better at meditation or nearer to enlightenment than you really are. I think most people think the reason why that is so serious, why you get kicked out for that, is because Buddhists want to make sure that the Buddhist Sangha maintains a good reputation. If someone goes around saying that they're near to enlightenment, and then it turns out they're not near to enlightenment, and then they do something bad, then it gives the whole of Buddhism a bad name. They're like, that bloke was supposed to be near to enlightenment, and now he's done all this terrible stuff. So if you lie about how close you are to enlightenment, it threatens the reputation of the Buddhist Sangha. So it's a very important thing not to do it. Commit murder. That is number 1. If you commit murder, then you're kicked out of the Sangha. Not to kill animals. This is number 5. You just have to confess that you've killed an animal. It might seem strange to us, but there we go. Not to create a division within the Sangha. That means basically you decide, I'm going to break away and start my own group of monks separate to all the other monks. That's bad for the religion, right? Having disunity. So that is category number 2. You get kicked out for a bit. Not to hit another monk. It's only 5. You just have to confess that you did it. Not to make or have made a needle box in ivory, bone or horn. That is number 5. Number 4. You got to confess and give it up. Sorry. Confess and give it up. Why a needle box? Well, I read this interesting thing which basically said that this rule is kind of a way of generally saying try not to be proud about having possessions, right? Because monks and nuns, like I said, can only have 8 possessions, and one of the possessions is a needle and thread. But the idea is, I suppose, is that even when you've got a very small amount of things, some people still want to be better than other people. So they might think, we've only got 8 possessions. One of them's a needle and thread. Perhaps I can show my superiority to other people by having a special box made to put my needle in. So the idea is here, even, that this is a kind of Buddhist idea. Craving is a sneaky thing, according to Buddhism. Even amongst people who have almost no possessions, there's still a kind of craving there amongst people to be better than the other person. And in this way, this is one way it can happen. So it's trying to say, don't do that. Next one, not to divert for his own benefit a donation made to the Sangha. So something's given to the community of monks and nuns and you just take it for yourself. Well, that is 4. You've got to confess. Not to tickle. You have to confess. This is number 5. You're not allowed to tickle. Not to swing the arms when going in an inhabited area. That is number 6. You have to, it's just advice. Now, I'll come back to what this whole thing is about. Why? Because basically this is saying you can swing your arms if you're on your own, but you can't swing your arms if you're in an inhabited area. Seems strange, but we'll talk about why. Not to laugh loudly when sitting in an inhabited area. So you can laugh loudly on your own, but if other people are living there, you can't do it. That's number 6 as well. Not to ask for food of a superior quality for oneself. That is 5. You just got to confess. I suppose it's not 4 because you can't give up the food because you've already eaten it when they find out. Yeah, that's kind of important when Buddhist monks rely completely on lay people for their food. They are not allowed to cook. They are not allowed to buy food for themselves because they haven't got any money. So they have to rely on donations. And they just have to eat what they're given. You are not allowed to say, oh, no, I want this, I want that. People always ask me, what about if they've got food allergies or stuff like that? Yes, an exception is made then usually. I think always. Okay, what's the next one? Not to accept money, that is 4. You just got to give it up and confess. Not to speak with your mouth full, that is 6. Okay, fantastic. So we've got some examples of the different rules for monks and nuns. The next thing we're going to do is just to talk about why those rules are there. This bit you need to write stuff on some paper, back on your paper. So what are the rules for? I think we can identify 2 reasons for the rules in Buddhism. Some rules are there in order to help monastics to overcome craving and reach nirvana. So look at the rules, for example, that thing about not having a needle box made in ivory, bone or horn. Well, having that needle box is based on craving. And so you shouldn't have, you should get rid of it. Not to hit another monk. Well, that's based on hatred. Well, you've got to get rid of hatred if you want to get to nirvana. What else can we say? Not to keep an extra robe. That is, craving again. Not to divert for your own benefit a donation made to the Sangha, again, based on craving. Not to ask for food of a superior quality. All these things are to do with getting rid of craving. And, in some cases, hatred and those kind of things. So, yeah, people should ideally be becoming monks to get to nirvana. And so the rules are there to help you to get to nirvana. For me, the classic one is not eating in the afternoon. Buddhist monks don't think it's bad to eat, but what they think is bad is craving. And one thing that people crave is food. Now, a good way to get rid of craving of food is to set yourself a thing and say, I'm only going to eat in the morning. That means I've got enough food to live. And if I give myself a rule saying I can't have food in the afternoon, they would say it's easier to overcome the craving because you can't beat a craving if you're always giving in to the craving. But if you have a rule saying, well, you're just not allowed to eat in the afternoon, then that should make it easier for you to overcome the craving because you're not constantly tempted to give in to that craving, if that makes sense. However, and you need to write both of these reasons down, it's definite that some of these rules are nothing to do with getting to nirvana. I can't see how it helps you to get to nirvana to not swing your arms in an inhabited area. Some of these rules are to do with making sure that monastics just means monks or nuns, have a good image among lay people. This is important because monks and nuns are not allowed to make money or even cook for themselves. They rely completely on the support of others. This is where we come to this inhabited areas thing. People give to monks and nuns because they think monks and nuns are living a great religious life. They're people that they hold up as a great example. Because of this, people want to see that they are serious, devoted religious people, that they're not silly, mucking around kind of people who aren't taking things seriously. So a lot of these rules are there to uphold the reputation of monks and nuns, right? So if we think, not to laugh loudly in inhabited areas, not to swing your arms in inhabited areas, we can see from the rule that it can't be wrong to swing your arms, because if it was wrong to swing your arms, then you wouldn't be able to swing your arms ever. If it was wrong to laugh out loud, then you wouldn't be able to laugh out loud ever. You're only not allowed to do it in inhabited areas. In other words, where there are lots of lay people. So these rules are aimed to give monks a kind of serious reputation amongst lay people. Tickling is probably the same. how seriously would a monk be taken as a great spiritual person if he was constantly tickling people? Not to speak with your mouth full, it's just good manners. All those things, right, are supposed to be about making sure that the monks maintain their good reputation amongst the lay people. So those are the two reasons why the rules are there. Okay, we move on to the importance of the Sangha. Now, this kind of stuff is really important for essay writing because, a very likely 6-marker might be explain the importance of the Sangha to Buddhists. So this is where we get to the next section. I've given you 4 reasons for the importance of the Sangha. I just want you to read them through. And if you've got it printed out in front of you and you've got a highlighter, you could highlight the bit that you think is the evidence part of each point. We've said before that it's difficult to find evidence sometimes. So read them through and highlight the part that's the evidence part. You might also want to think about, if you were doing a 15-marker, how might you criticise this point? Why might this point not be a convincing reason why the Sangha is important? The first 3 of these reasons are reasons why the monastic Sangha is important, monks and nuns. The last one can be applied to monks and nuns, or it can be applied to all Buddhists. Just having a community around you is important. What I'm going to do is, you might want to just pause this and just read through them and see if you can highlight the evidence yourself, or I'm just going to talk it through. So if you want to, you can just listen to this video all the way through and I'll talk it through and you can tell you what to highlight. And I'll pull out some criticisms that you might want to write on the sheet. If you haven't got the sheet, I would just write down the name of each point, A, B, C, D, and write down the evidence bit and the criticism, and then you can get the rest when you get the handout later. Okay, let's go for the first one. Because it helps people to reach nirvana. The rules that Buddhist monks and nuns follow help them to follow the Buddha's teachings more closely, and this helps them to move towards nirvana more quickly than other people. For example, they are only allowed to eat 1 meal a day, and this helps them to follow the middle way and reduce their craving. We talked about this just a moment ago. Andrew Huxley, who has studied the rules that monks and nuns follow, says that these rules act as a performance-enhancing drug for people trying to reach nirvana. Now that quote by Andrew Huxley, performance-enhancing drug, should be your evidence. What does he mean by that? Well, in the same way that performance-enhancing drugs, right? Those are drugs that athletes take in, well, they're not supposed to take them, but sometimes they have, in athletics and stuff, particularly famously in cycling, I guess. And they take those performance-enhancing drugs and they help them to get faster to the finish line, right? They go faster because of these performance-enhancing drugs. He is basically saying the rules for monks and nuns are like that. You can get to nirvana without them, but you're probably going to get there quicker with them because they help you to give up your cravings more quickly, or give up your hatred more quickly, because they kind of force you into forms of behavior that help you to get rid of these things. It kind of made me think recently, like it's about discipline, really. When recently I tried to get more, do more exercise, right? And I did this Couch to 5K. It's like an app that you do from the BBC, and basically it gets you to run 3 times a week. And what I found is that even though I didn't want to do it, I didn't really enjoy it, I did do the running because the app told me to, and I felt kind of bad about breaking the rules of the app. I felt like, oh, well, I'm doing this app, I should do it. Same thing really in Buddhism. It's like saying, well, Buddhists are supposed to give up craving. To give up craving, you need to do stuff like, well, stop just snacking on your favourite foods anytime you want, and stop just buying stuff that you just want to have. You've got to give stuff up. Well, the Buddhist rules being there help monks to give stuff up because it's a barrier against you doing those things. It stops you from doing those things even if you want to. So there's one. Why might you criticise that point? Well, my main criticism would be that Andrew Huxley is probably a bit wrong in that we've already seen not all the rules for Buddhist monks are about getting to nirvana. There are lots of rules for Buddhist monks which have nothing to do with getting to nirvana. So you might say, well, it's partly true, but also it doesn't seem like the Sangha is purely about getting to nirvana. So it's only half true, maybe. Okay, Next one, B. Because monks and nuns are the ones who have preserved the Dharma. Monks and nuns are the ones who have handed down and preserved the teachings of the Buddha for 2,500 years. At first, these teachings were preserved orally and not in writing. Monks would learn them by heart and then pass them on to the next generation before they died. When writing was developed, it was the monks who wrote down the teachings. Without the Sangha, the teachings would have been lost. This is a very true point. Lay people do not have the time to memorize huge amounts of the teachings of the Buddha. And it should be said, the Pali Canon is much bigger than the Bible, for example. It's a huge amount of writing, right? So, and when the Buddha was alive, people didn't write stuff down. I think writing was invented, but it was mainly used for, like, you know, businesses to record their accounts and stuff with. People didn't write down stuff like they do today. So there had to be a way of preserving these teachings. And yet the only way that they could have been preserved is if monks and nuns, there were monks and nuns who did not have any other job and to dedicate themselves to learning them off by heart. They would just chant them out loud. And then before they died, they'd pass them on to someone else who would memorize them, pass them on to someone else and someone else. Now your evidence here should be the second sentence down, right? Just to talk about, your evidence would just be the thing that happened, that monks learnt them by heart and passed them on by generation to generation. Now you might think, I mean, this could be a criticism, I suppose. Some people might think, hold on, how can they be sure that they were accurately preserved if they were never written down, if they were just passed down from person to person? Well, that might be true to some extent, but interestingly, studies that there are some societies still who use oral tradition to pass things on, who don't write stuff down and pass it on just person to person. There are still some examples of societies like that in the world today. And the truth is that generally they're very good at preserving things accurately. The main reason being that if you know, like for example, we know that we don't really need to memorize stuff because it's all on the internet, right? We don't need to memorize facts because we can always look it up again. If you know that this fact will be lost if you don't memorize it, then you take memorizing it much more seriously. You know, it kind of reminds me of this fact. When I was growing up, if you wanted to meet your friend, we much more likely to be on time because no one had a phone and therefore you couldn't ring them and say, well, where are you now? You just have to meet them. Otherwise, you're not going to see them that day. Now that I've got a phone, I'm constantly late. I just ring people and say, oh, sorry, where are you? So, same way here, that when people preserve things orally in the past, if they knew that they couldn't rely on it being written down as well, they would really put a lot of dedication into it. How could you criticize this point? Well, I could say that my main criticism would be this. This is a reason why monks and nuns used to be important, but we don't need that function anymore. Because nowadays the teachings are written down, they're all preserved electronically, they're on the internet, they'll never be lost. Or it's unlikely they'll be lost. So I would say that this might be a good reason why they used to be important. It's not a very good reason why they're important now. Okay, C, a field of merit, because people need monks and nuns to make merit. In Buddhism, monks and nuns are described as a field of merit. This means that good acts performed towards monks and nuns brings more karmic merit than good actions performed towards other people. Because of this, for many lay Buddhists, the most important religious action is to give to monks. To support monks, particularly by feeding them, is the best way to achieve a good rebirth in your next life. Good reason for monks to be important for many Buddhists. Particularly, you might want to put this word down, for Kammatic Buddhists. And who created the term Kammatic Buddhists? Well, you should be shouting out at home, Melford Spiro, he coined that term. Your evidence here would be the phrase field of merit. You know, that's what they're called. They describe monks and nuns as a field of merit. That means that's a metaphor coming from agriculture, from farming, right? Because most people at the Buddha's time were farmers, I guess. If you plant a seed in a field, it grows. But in a field of and same way, if you plant the seed of good karma, it will blossom into some benefit, into merit for you later. So, but a field of merit is like a special field. If you plant the seed in the field of merit, if you give to particularly monks and nuns, then you will get much more results from it. You'll get much better merit from monks and nuns. So that's why monks and nuns are so important. What's your criticism here? Well, my criticism would be that making merit is not supposed to be the goal of Buddhism. Most Buddhists would say you should be trying to get to nirvana. You shouldn't be concentrating on feeding monks to get to the next life. You should be focusing on you getting to nirvana. So that would be my criticism. Okay, D is a reason why all monks and not all of the Sangha is important. This could be an argument for monks and nuns, but it also could be an argument for all Buddhists. Just an argument for having a Sangha, for having a community. And this is a story from the Pali Canon. The Buddha is talking to his loyal companion Ananda. Ananda is the Buddha's right-hand man. I think he's also his cousin, but mainly he's important because he's always there with the Buddha. Ananda says that he thinks that having good spiritual friends is so important that it makes up half of what it means. To lead a holy life. So he says, like, good spiritual companions, friendship is half of the holy life. By that he means a life of someone trying to reach nirvana. The Buddha says, don't say that, Ananda. Don't say that. Admirable. I can't even say that word. Admirable. It just means good. Friendship is actually the whole of the holy life. When a monk has admirable people as friends, companions, and comrades, he can be expected to develop and pursue the Noble Eightfold Path. For Buddhists, having friends who are also Buddhists, whether they are monks, nuns, or lay people, is vital if we want to reach nirvana, because they can give us support, provide us with an example to follow, and let us know when we need to put in more effort. So this is just the idea of having supportive people around you. Buddhists know that it's not easy to get to nirvana, to follow the Eightfold Path, to get rid of all your craving. It's very difficult. And therefore it's very, very useful, in fact vital, to have people around you who can guide you, who can set a good example, who can, give you a bit of a kick in the right direction if you need to put in more effort. So, say if you're can't be bothered to meditate that day, they'll say, no, come on, you need to do it. Or if you want to give into your cravings and eat chocolate all day, they'll say, no, don't do that, that's not going to be helpful for you, and so on and so on and so on. That is the idea of spiritual friendship. Now you might say it's a bit going over the top a bit, and I think that Buddhists would agree that the Buddha was probably being a bit over dramatic in what he's saying, because if you think about it, if you say having good friends is the whole of the holy life, the whole of getting to nirvana, well, what about actually the meditation and the following the Dharma? So my criticism would be here is that, say, you might get asked a 15 marker like this, the Sangha is the most important thing in Buddhism, right? Well, here, he seems to be saying it's the most important thing in Buddhism. It's like the whole of the path to nirvana. But it's only important because it helps you follow the Eightfold Path, or that helps you follow the Dharma. So really, yes, this shows that the Sangha is important, but it's only really important because it helps you to follow the Dharma. So if I was going to answer which is more important, the Dharma or the Sangha, according to this piece of evidence, I'd still say the Dharma is more important, because the Sangha is only important because it helps you to follow the Dharma. Okay, that's that point there. Here's what I want you to do now. Of course, the evidence part there would just be the quote. What I want you to do now is to, I just write an SEE for this. The question would be something like this. Explain one reason why the monastic Sangha is important to Buddhists. And I want you to just pick one of the pieces of evidence, one of the reasons, and see if you can explain it. So I'll just talk you through one just to to give you an example. You can do my one, you can do a different one. Let's do C, field of merit, right? One reason why the monastic Sangha is important to Buddhists is because it helps them to get a better rebirth. Then we do, in our evidence, we just talk about the field of merit. Monks and nuns are described as a field of merit. This means acts performed towards them brings more karmic merit than good actions performed towards other people. This shows that the Sangha is important because if lay people want to get a better rebirth in the next life, they need good merit. Therefore, it's important that there are monks and nuns around so that they can give things like food to them so they can make merit for the next life. You could use that one to write your SEE, or you could choose one of the other ones to write your SEE. It's up to you. Okay, let's move on. This video is long and I'm losing my voice rapidly. Okay, the last thing we're going to look at is about Buddhism and feminism. The reason we're looking at this is because of the position of nuns in the Sangha. So we're basically looking at how equally are women treated in Buddhism. But we're going to focus particularly on monks and nuns and whether they're treated equally. If we were in class, we would discuss this. What is feminism? Feminism is just basically the idea that men and women should have equal roles in society and have equal value and the same opportunities. They should be treated equally. That's what feminism is all about. What kind of thing would make a religion feminist? Well, I suppose anything in terms that showed that men and women were treated equally. On the other hand, what kind of things would make a religion not feminist? Well, anything that meant women were treated unequally. Are monks given a superior status to nuns? Are there parts of the religion that suggest men and women should play different roles, fundamentally different roles, and so on and so on? So let's have a look at our evidence. On your worksheet, you should have the following slide. Oh, sorry. There's another video. Have a watch of this video. This is just for like a bit of background, really. This is about Buddhist nuns and some of the problems they face. So just have a watch of the video. Don't need to write anything down. Just see what they face, and then we can come back here. So you should have seen there that monks and nuns face some problems in Buddhism. Particularly, it was focusing on Theravada Buddhism, right? In Theravada Buddhism, the order of nuns has actually died out. Now, this is complicated, but you need to ordain, and that it means to make someone a nun. So to ordain a nun, you need 10 nuns. So the ceremony can only happen with 10 nuns to approve the ordination. At some point, the number of nuns in Theravada countries died out, went so small that it went below 10. There was not 10 nuns. And because of that, it was impossible to create a new nun. And so now there aren't nuns in Theravada Buddhism. There are people who live the lifestyle of nuns, but they're not officially counted as nuns, and they're not given the status that monks are given. So it's interesting. There's the full video of that documentary is on YouTube if you want to search it out. It's really, really interesting if you want to watch it. So what we're going to do is look at the next sheet, which is on your handout. So for each one of these statements, I want you to think: does this make Buddhism look like a feminist religion? In other words, is this something that makes Buddhism it look like Buddhism treats men and women equally, or does it look like men and women are not treated equally? So I'm going to let you go through this on your own. You can pause the video, and when you unpause, I'll go through a couple of other things, but not too much. Okay, you should have gone through these things. Let's have a look. I'll just pick out a couple of examples. Let's go. Second one on the top. When he was first asked to ordain women, the Buddha did not want to. His friend and assistant Ananda had to convince him. Does it make Buddhism look like a feminist religion? No. Why? Well, I would say, the Buddha clearly did not think at first did not want monks and nuns, did not women to have the same status as monks. He didn't want them to be able to become the same thing as monks. Let's find one that's more positive. Bottom left. In the Pali Canon, there are stories about men and women reaching enlightenment, both of them. Does it seem feminist? Yes, it seems more feminist because it's saying both men and women can reach the highest status in the religion, can reach nirvana. That's not true of all religions that have, there are other religions out there that have a kind of goal of similar to Buddhist nirvana, and not all of them would say that both men and women can reach it. They would... some say that only men can reach that goal. So that's quite feminist. If we go to middle left, in some kinds of Mahayana Buddhism, all beings, both male and female, have Buddha nature. This means they are of equal value. Yeah, it kind of reminds me that, if we say all beings have Buddha nature, it's a bit like in Christianity, similar anyway, to when it says God created mankind, humans in his image, male and female, he created them. It's kind of saying, deep down, all people have Buddha nature, which is the ultimate thing. They have nirvana within them. So at a deep level, they would say there's no difference between a man and a woman. They both have that Buddha nature. So that's quite feminist. Let's find one that is not feminist. Among monks, the senior member of the Sangha is the one who has been ordained the longest. However, even nuns who have been ordained for many years are considered less important than the most junior monk. So this is very significant, and this would be not feminist, right? When two Buddhist monks meet, what they're supposed to do, if they've never met each other, they're supposed to say, "How long have you been a monk?" And they say, and then they say, "How long have you been a monk?" And they say, and the one who is been a monk longer bows to the one who's been the one who's been the monk for a shorter time bows to the monk who's been there the longer time, just to show respect. But nuns have to, when they meet a monk, they have to bow to that monk, even if that monk's been a monk for like a day and they've been a nun for 60 years. So there's always that bit in Buddhism that monks are on a superior level to nuns. So it's interesting, and some people find it a bit depressing. There's a lot to be said about it. I mean, at A level, my students recently been talking about this at A level, but we talk about whether what the Buddha thought about feminism and all those kind of things in more detail, because there might have been reasons from the culture around him that meant. Some people have suggested that Buddha actually believed in equality between men and women, but there was pressure from the society around them to make Buddhist monks and nuns not be treated equally, if that makes sense. But for our purposes, if your overall conclusion probably should be that Buddhism is not a feminist religion. Okay, I think that's everything we're going to do for now. It's been quite a long lesson. What I'm going to do is... Oh, yeah, sorry, I've got one more thing. Yeah, this really depends on the time you've got left. Yeah, I knew that there was something at the end. What we would do in the lesson is make a revision card. I don't know how long it's taken, because this video is almost an hour. I don't know how long it's taken you to go through. Obviously, there's 2 hours in the lesson, so you might have plenty of time left. If you have, you can do this. And that would be this. Make a revision card. I would probably give you like half a piece of card, half a piece of A4, so that'd be A5 size. And just to kind of condense what you've learnt about the Sangha. So I'd want you to write on it. You can do it with a piece of paper. 2 definitions of the Sangha. 3 reasons someone might become a monk. 3 reasons why the Sangha is important. It'd be good to put your evidence in there, field of merit, and so on. 1 way in which women are treated worse than men in Buddhism, and 1 way in which women are treated equally to men in Buddhism. That would be the last thing to do. So it'd be good if you could do that. That's all that we're going to do today. I know it's been a bit difficult one because a 2-hour lesson at home is quite tough, but the video's here, so if you want, hopefully you've been able to do it in your own time. Okay, thank you guys.